Uncle Wally, how did you become a navigator?
Well, I grew up in Swains Island, American Samoa, one of the islands that make up American Samoa. And I remember when I was a kid, all the elders would bring all the kids to the beach, and showed us the stars, the constellations. And as I was growing up, I was really involved in the Pacific studies. How did names like in Hawaii, they have a place called Upolu Point there in the Big Island, and yet we have an island in Samoa called Upolu. Like in Ta'u, you got the Hawaiians call it Ka'u. So it fascinated me is how did these names, coincide with these Pacific islands in Hawaii, and found out that our ancient ancestors were navigators that settled and colonized a lot of these islands. And I look at Hawaii, how far they progressed with the hokulea and their traditions and revitalizing that with people from Micronesia. So to answer your question, Tia, was that I became a navigator for my family. All the trips that goes to Manua and Swains Island, I'm the only navigator that goes there by boat. But it's not the old traditional style. It's all modern technology now. But it fascinates me how modern technology and that old traditional coincides. One of my ancestors told me when I was learning the constellations, he said, remember, the compass can go wrong, but the stars never. So I always kept that in the back of my head all these years.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you do a lot of GPS and modern technology with the navigating, but can you talk a little bit about how traditional navigators are selected maybe in your community and culture?
Yes, with this thing with the hokulea in Hawaii in the 80s when they started sailing, they kind of revitalized the old traditional method. The Samoan method is, we knew of it, but we haven't really aggressively pursued it, but we're watching how Hawaii does it, and, we want to piggyback on our own identity because the similarity of old tradition sailing it's similar to we're all Polynesian distant cousins. And that's why I really admire how Hawaii and the new generation. I was in the Merchant Marine for 35 years. I'm a licensed ocean master at the U.S. Coast Guard. And I sailed through Micronesia and all different parts of the world. And that's how I could relate to navigation with modern technology and the old traditional method.
Sorry, I sneezed over your response. Could you just, as a pickup, if you could say that the Polynesian method is similar, because that's what you're saying when I sneeze, so they can have the sound, if they need to use that light. So if you could restate the portion where you're saying the navigation, you're talking about the navigation, and I think you said the Polynesian method is similar.
Oh, you want me to elaborate on that?
If you could, you could elaborate on it if you want, but if you could just specifically pick up that one section where you said the Polynesian method is similar, just so they have it, because I sneezed right when you were saying that.
So just repeat the Polynesian method is similar?
Okay.
So just repeat it, I guess.
Start all over again?
Nope.
Or just
Actually,
those
if you just say exactly the Polynesian method is similar, that would be good.
Okay. Yeah, the Polynesian method of ancient navigation is similar, with the new technology, but non-instrumental.
Very good.
Just using the stars, the moon. And
Good. So just be careful with your responses. You can nod in agreement, yeah, but if you're agreeing verbally, then they're going to hear
Is
it.
this picking me up?
Well, no, but this might.
That is, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't hurt you.
Okay. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about what qualities or traits would make up a really excellent navigator and seaman and just a captain, just somebody on the ocean.
what I learned from the old traditional side in Polynesian navigation was that when the council of elders in a village would pick their students, that student has to have it in his heart to be a Polynesian navigator. Some of the traits that he needs to have is that he respects the ocean, and he can't be intimidated or ever get into a situation where he fears the ocean, but to respect it. And I think these are the qualities that they're instilled in the young Polynesians to learn the old traditional method of Polynesian navigation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm always trying to get my kids in the water. Okay, so moving on. There are so many things to prepare for a voyage. How do you prepare for a voyage?
I remember in the old days when they tried, it was a village thing, it was a family thing. If a expedition was to journey out to one of the Pacific Islands, the whole village would get together, and the Council of Elders would designate families and their responsibilities in getting provisions, supplies for the old Polynesian traditional sailboats. And, the livestock would be pigs, chicken that they would store on board. The women would boil the salt water to extract salt out of it. And this salt, they will salt the fish down, because it'll keep for a long time. And these were all provisions, food staples, supplements for the Polynesian method of sailing out in the Pacific. And, they had drinking nuts, which was loaded with drinking nuts, and the dried coconuts, where they last a long time without husking. And they make use of everything from the land. But to answer your question, it was a group thing. It wasn't, it's like that old saying, no man's an island. They all get together and they all help, and they all pray for a successful trip to the next island, the destination.
That's awesome. Very similar to how we do it here. How important was or is crew selection in this whole process?
It's very important. The sea, what I experience, is not for everybody. It's a certain breed of people that can go out there and endure the elements. And you have to learn this at a young age. And as a youngster, you have to go with the elders fishing. You have to learn and see how they do it. And you can't even say anything or make noise on these fishing traditions, or you get clobbered with the paddle. And what it is really respect. It's like I looked up to some of my old, we call them tautais. They're fishermen of the sea. And these people know the old Polynesian traditional. They're no longer here, but some of their teaching was passed on to me and a lot of my Polynesian cousins.
How would you describe open ocean navigation?
To me, open ocean navigation is you really know and how to, before you even venture in the vast ocean, you really have to have all the ingredients in you to face the obstacles of the ocean, to know how the ocean can help you, to use the birds, the flocks of seabirds, to show you destinations in the traditional Polynesian navigation. To me, to sail out in the ocean, you find tranquility, peace of mind, and the awesome power. In those days, what I gathered, the Polynesians didn't believe in God, but they had their own God. They had shrines that you'll find on all these Polynesian islands. And they had to give an offering to these shrines, so they must have believed in something. And that's what fascinated me, was that, there's always somebody watching over you when you're out in this vast ocean Pacific.
Can you, in your own words, kind of define or describe what non-traditional or traditional non-instrumental navigation really is and looks like?
Well, non-traditional is, you don't have all this modern technology like GPS, satellite navigation. The ancient Pacific traditional, what I learned, what I studied throughout the years, was that you have to learn how to read the stars, the constellations, the ocean swells, telltale signs of atolls, Pacific islands, cloud formations, seabirds, the way you point your vessel, knowing how the swell pattern is. To sail from what the Hokulea did was that was the old traditional method. They just picked the star and they waited for another constellation. They sailed by that. During the day, they knew the sun, they knew the swell patterns, they knew the direction. It wasn't for everybody. It was just a certain breed of people that could learn this method, the old Polynesian traditional method, and to stick with it and to hang on to it. And when you have that type of person that has that confidence, you have a good crew.
So when you're out in the ocean with no land in sight, and it's you and your crew, and either it's a beautiful day or it's a stormy day, what does it feel like other than being tranquil? And what other things are going through your mind and body?
Paradise.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're going to a destination, and to arrive at that destination is all on skill, all on ability, and belief in yourself, and knowingly that the leader, the tautai, or the captain of that vessel, knows and takes care of his crew that will arrive at their destinations safely. That's the feeling that I get when I was a youngster sailing with some of these old timers. That I knew I was going to arrive. I had no doubts in my mind that this man in the old traditional method, we were going to arrive to our destinations.
1 second. Josh, can you hear about water? Yeah.
Okay. You ready?
Rolling?
So you mentioned birds as one indicator for finding islands and land masses. What other animals do you folks use when out in the ocean?
Well, you have the school of porpoises. There are certain areas that that they come up, near an island or something. The porpoise was the seaman's best friend. There were one telltale signs of animals that, porpoises. Another thing was like if you knew the behavior of the seabirds, okay, like the French frigate or the white terns, they will never go further than 60 miles. They're always, that's the white terns. And then you got your boobies, the seabirds, that will, in the morning, you have to look, the Polynesian navigator has to look at the birds that are what direction they're coming out. If they're coming out at a certain direction, early in the morning hours, then they're going to go feed. They're going to go feed on something. And this would be a flock of tuna. And if you encounter these seabirds out at sea, then you wait for them till late evening after they feed. And they're at late evening, just before the sun sets, these birds will fly low and in a certain direction. And the navigator would know that he's going home, those birds are going home to feed their youngsters. And then the thing is, you get that direction that they're flight, then you change your course. Then you wait till the following morning, and you see where the birds are coming out. But these are all telltale signs. You look at the cloud formations. Like for me, I've done a lot of deliveries in the South Seas, coming up to Hawaii. 100 miles plus out, I'd be looking on the horizon, and these old navigators would know the cloud formation. And if you look at the clouds, on a good day, they'll move. But you're going to find one cloud that's stationary. And that cloud is going to be hanging over a mountain like Mauna Kea. I think it's 4,000 feet above sea level. And I've seen signs like that over 150 miles because your height of eye, from your canoe or from the ship that you're looking at and the curvature of the earth. But these were signs that the Polynesian navigators would look for. And then when you come near like the equator and those line islands over there where a lot of the atolls are, a certain time of the day during about 10, 11 o'clock, you would look at the cloud formation, and some of the clouds would be, pure white, and then a band of cloud would be like a hinted blue. And what it is the reflection from the lagoon on these atolls up to these clouds. These were another telltale signs that the ancient Polynesian method of navigation would go for, because everything was just at the mercy of the head navigator, and they found their destinations. We not only it's like the Hukulea, they found all these destinations, they sailed, and they came back. So that tells me something.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an art that I feel very strongly that we should never lose. It's an identity to our Polynesians.
That one line, sorry to interrupt. Can you say that one line again?
It's an art.
Yeah, it was very strong. I just want to get a different angle on it.
So could you say that again?
It's an art that we don't want to lose.
Yeah, to me, the way I was brought up, I come from the old school. It's a method that I know has proven itself. It wasn't just a method that people would get lost or anything like that. And being a merchant mariner and using modern technology, I'm still amazed how the Polynesians found their destinations with non-traditional equipment on board their catamarans.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit. So, to you, how important do you think learning the practice of non-instrument navigation is and passing it along from generation to generation?
I think it's very important. Although times changed, I always kid around with some of my shipmates or some of my Polynesian kids that I try to teach the old method, is that if you're on a ship about 1,000 miles away from the island and you lose the satellites, there's no GPS anymore, you better know where you are, because 3/4 of the world is covered by water. And if you know the old traditional method, at least you know your cardinal points, north, east, south, west. And that's what I really admire about how our ancient navigators, the Polynesian, navigated the high seas in the Pacific. And today I still strongly believe that this Polynesian identity should never be lost. It should be passed on. And that's why I look at the Hawaii, how they're doing their educational programs where they introduce it in school. I think it's going to catch on with Micronesia and in the Pacific Islands in the future.
Do you think that in this world of moving towards conservation and sort of awareness of our surroundings and our environment and a more stewardship-based method of living, do you think that ocean voyaging, navigation, that can play a role? And if you do, what role would it play?
Well, first of all, it's education. It's, in my travels, I've seen so much pollution in the Pacific. So much pollution, it's pathetic. Plastic containers, plastics that, seabirds get caught in it. You got the turtles that eat all these trash that's thrown overboard ship out in the open ocean, and they think it's like a jellyfish. And the turtles come and consume that. They think it's vegetation. And then they, it's like a domino effect. It affects all the natural birds and the sea, and we just have to have a lot of more respect for our ocean. And that's why I say I think the ancient Polynesian traditional navigation, they had a lot of respect for the ocean because they lived off it. All the Pacific Islands are surrounded by water. And that was the means of transportation, was that the ocean was their highways. going from one island to another atoll. That's why I feel very strongly that more education, making the Polynesians aware, in fact, everybody in the world aware of that, we got to keep our oceans clean and, and keep it fit for the next generation.
Yeah. Not to mention it fed us, right? So, can you sort of articulate, I guess, a link between traditional navigating and our current world? I think you have in a lot of ways, being a mariner yourself and using a lot of the non-traditional ways of navigating currently, but maybe you could just elaborate on trying to find a good link between then and now and the practices of then and moving forward with it all.
Well, the way I look at it, the Polynesian method of navigation, ancient navigation, in populating and settling these islands was discovery. I look at the missions of the rockets going to the moon and all these places for discovery. It all had to start from somewhere, and it started from the way I feel, it was a group of individuals that wanted to explore and settle the Pacific Islands. I look at the modern technology. It's like I said, it's the wheel of progress. You can't stop the wheel of progress. The ancient method of Polynesian navigation, they were reliant on their skills. Nowadays, with modern technology, if you're caught in a storm, you got weather faxes, you got technology to tell the captain of the ship to go away from the storm. In those days, it was just that they knew that something was coming. The old Polynesian method, and the only way they could do was to prepare for the worst. I remember one of the stories my uncle once told me on these small canoes. If they were caught in some heavy weather, because the freeboard of these canoes are only about a foot and a half, and they would get swamped with these big swells. And you got to remember, the canoe would float, and they're out fishing. They can't bail the water out, so they would go alongside and tie themselves up to the canoe, and weather the storm. And when the storm subsided, they jumped back in their canoe and bailed the water out, and they sailed back home. And when I think of those stories, I said, wow. Survival of the fittest.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay, so the last question. We always need to tie it into fishing, obviously. So what does navigation have to do with fishing or fish, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think a lot. Because I was a commercial fisherman before I joined the Merchant Marine. And, when you head out to sea, it's, the old days they used to say it's all lucky luck. The way you point the bow, where you go, here and there. But the Polynesian method of navigation, the traditional old method, they don't go blind. They would go and look for the birds. And then the birds would then show them where the tuna is, and they would fish. And they would just catch for their needs and bring back what they caught. So it's like they know where these far-off pinnacles were because they could tell by the telltale signs of ocean swells. You got thousands of fathoms of deep water out in open ocean. Then all of a sudden you'd see the swells building up. And what it means is coming to a shallow seamount, a far-off reef over there where there's plentiful of bottom fish. And these navigators of the old traditional method would, they will use these signs to go and make sure that they go and catch fish and then come back home. And so I feel very strongly the old Polynesian traditional method of fishing, you can't go wrong with that. I remember the old timers would say different time of the year because of your constellations. They knew exactly when to make their lures for yellowfin, for bonito, or whatever. It was a seasonal thing. So if they knew around January, February, where you get the the constellations, certain constellations come up as the evening stars, then they would know to prepare for those fishing expeditions. And they wouldn't go out by themselves. They would go out with a fleet of bonito boats. And, and after they catch their catch, then they would come back. But, they didn't have any compass. They didn't have any technology. All it was passed on from generation to generation. And today, I can do the same thing because what I've taught, and I said you can't go wrong. It's going back to that old saying, teach a man to fish, he'll eat fish forever,
Awesome. Well, that's all I got.
Let's just do one last thing just for editor's sake. If you can just look right into camera and give us your name. So just say, hi, my name is Wally, and then what your title is, so that they can put it underneath you when you start talking. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. Can I give them my credentials?
Sure. Actually, why don't you say it to her, to Tia?
Okay, you go ahead and ask me my.
Okay. What is your name and title and credentials?
Okay, my name is Captain Wally Thompson. I am a Master Mariner, U.S. Coast Guard license, all oceans, international. I was born in American Samoa, and I traveled all over the world as an ocean master.
And last thing is, say your name and spell it for us.
Let me spell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first and last name is Wally Thompson. It's spelled W-A-L-L-Y. Last name is Thompson, T-H-O-M-P-S-O-N. And I think I might be related to Nainoa Thompson.